Imagine waking in the dead of night, heart pounding so violently it feels like it might crack your ribs. You lie there, motionless, drenched in sweat, consumed by a dread you can't name. The room is silent. No threats, no voices, no shadows on the wall, just stillness. And yet, something inside you is screaming, not out loud, but deeper, in a place beyond language. You try to breathe, to calm yourself. But something essential is gone, not broken, not stolen, gone. As if a thread holding your inner world together has snapped without warning. You blink into the darkness, your eyes are open, but no answers come. Only a question, echoing through the void. Who are you? If what just died inside you no longer exists, this isn't a nightmare. You're not asleep, and it's not fear of something outside. It's the tremor of something unraveling within. Not madness, not panic. Awakening, a prelude to collapse. You always thought waking up would feel like clarity, like light flooding in, but it's not. It's like watching your reflection dissolve. The identity you held on to, the one you called you, blurs, vanishes. Memories lose flavor. Words feel foreign. Beliefs disintegrate. You reach for your convictions, and they crumble in your hands. What you're feeling isn't exhaustion. It's the first fracture in a structure you thought was unshakable. Others will call it burnout. They'll blame your job, your routine, the world. They'll hand you advice like aspirin. Take a break. Find purpose. Motivate yourself. But those words don't reach you anymore. They sound like static, because deep down, you already know. This isn't about goals or meaning. It's about the collapse of the thing that once demanded those goals to survive. It's your ego that's dying, that inner narrator, the voice that always had a reason, always had a plan, the one that whispered, "You'll matter. When?" Now, it's fading, quieting, like smoke after the fire's out. You wake up and nothing excites you. No drive, no hunger, not even fear. It's not depression. It's the sound of silence where your identity used to live. It's the stillness of every mask you ever wore, hitting the ground. And it terrifies you, not because you're in pain, but because, for the first time, you are no one. And maybe, just maybe, that's not the end. Maybe that's where everything real begins. Think. Your biography, every achievement, every failure, every connection you ever called meaningful, was constructed around a role, a carefully maintained identity built to please, to impress, to survive. All of it served your ego, that invisible architect, that voice that demanded structure, demanded purpose, demanded that your life make sense through the lens of validation. You chased applause not because it fulfilled you, but because it confirmed you existed. You feared silence not because it was empty, but because it left the ego with nothing to feed on. Every success became a weapon to defend your role. Every wound, a chapter in a drama you needed to feel significant. And now, as you hear these words, that role, the one you rehearsed for so long, is unraveling. Unseen, unannounced, yet undeniable. You move through your days like a ghost, still following the choreography, but disconnected. Like someone who died quietly and hasn't realized it yet. The mind resists this, ferociously. It throws distractions at you like life buoys, new passions, new habits, new people. It whispers, maybe you just need a change. You try everything, a new routine, a deeper philosophy, a better lifestyle. But nothing touches the emptiness. Nothing ignites the spark. Because the spark you thought was life, it was a mirage, a flickering illusion powered by the memorized scripts your ego clung to. And now that those scripts are burning, all you're left with are ashes. You feel it in the weight of small talk, the fatigue in pretending to care, the blank stare when you try to summon enthusiasm. You're not lazy. You're not broken. You're disintegrating. And that disintegration is quiet, slow, invisible to the world, but deeply real. And your mind, desperate to survive, grabs at anything it can to feel someone again, to reconstruct a you it can understand. But that someone, that identity you want back, it was never really you. Not truly. Now, with the mask falling off, panic rises. You don't know how to exist without it. You wonder, why is it so terrifying to let go of something false? Because even a lie, when told long enough, becomes a shelter. A story gives order. A label gives belonging. A name gives recognition. And now, all of that is dissolving. No map, no script, just a blank horizon stretching endlessly in front of you. You miss motivation, that hunger to chase, to strive. But here's the truth you haven't dared to say out loud. That motivation was never yours. It was the voice of the puppet master, the echo of the ego's demands disguised as ambition. Now that the voice is quieting, what remains is terrifying freedom. Not the manic, anything is possible kind, but a still pregnant silence, where you are no one, where nothing is required, where you can no longer hide behind dreams or desires. And in that silence, a question emerges, not shouted, but whispered. Does this lack of desire mean something is wrong, or does it mean you're finally seeing clearly? Because clarity doesn't always come with fireworks. Sometimes it arrives as stillness, as the absence of illusion, as the first tremor of something real. And that tremor, though it feels like loss, might be the very beginning of your actual self. Here's what no one warns you, what almost no one even talks about. As the ego collapses, the shape of your relationships begins to warp. It doesn't happen suddenly. It creeps in, slowly, silently. You wake up one day and realize that the people who used to matter most now feel distant, almost faded. Their laughter sounds rehearsed. Their praise feels weightless. Their judgment, once piercing, now barely grazes you. You think at first it's you, that you've become cold, numb, apathetic. But it's not coldness. It's detachment. It's the quiet, unsettling recognition that the web of relationships around you wasn't woven with your essence. It was stitched together by the character you played. Friendships weren't always born of truth. They were contracts, agreements to reinforce the role you inhabited. You be who I expect you to be, and I'll be who you need me to be. But now, the costume no longer fits. The stage is burned, and the audience, those familiar faces, don't recognize you without your mask. The hardest part, the loneliness, doesn't come from being alone. It comes from still being surrounded by people who only ever knew the version of you that's now crumbling. They look at you and ask, "What happened?" But you can't explain it. Because what happened is that you're no longer pretending. You don't hate them. You don't blame them. But you can't lie to them either, not in the way you used to. You can't feign enthusiasm, can't offer the same responses, can't laugh at the same jokes you once clung to for validation. And so the connections thin. Not because of conflict, but because the thread that once tied you together was illusion. Now that illusion is gone. You ask yourself, if I'm no longer the person they needed me to be, who am I to them now? And in that question lies the most uncomfortable answer. Maybe you never really were that close. Maybe the bond wasn't built on you, but on your performance. This realization doesn't come with anger. It comes with silence. A silence so vast, so deafening, it hollows out your chest. You begin to grieve people who are still alive. Grieve a version of yourself that used to fit into their world. But you can't go back. Even if you wanted to, you couldn't resurrect that version, because it wasn't you. It was scaffolding. It was scaffolding held together by the need to belong. And now that you're dismantling that scaffolding, relationships built on it can't hold. They fall, one by one. Some gently, some violently, some disappear without even a goodbye. But a few, very few, survive. And those are the ones worth noticing, because they see you without the costume. They don't need the character. They stay, not because you serve a role, but because something deeper connects you. Something wordless, labelless, unshaped by your ego. This part of the journey is brutal. The silence is sharp. But don't mistake it for failure. That silence is a clearing. The burnt forest floor, after the blaze. It's not a punishment. It's a rite of passage. You're not being abandoned. You're shedding. And in the shedding, you're making room. Room for truth. Room for connection that doesn't rely on roles. Room for a self that doesn't need to be anything other than present. So if you feel alone, let it hurt. But don't run. Because this isn't the end of your social world. It's the first time it's being rebuilt on something real. Here's the most confusing part. The part no one prepares you for. You wake up one morning and everything looks the same. The sky hasn't cracked open. The sun still rises. Notifications still flood your phone. Motivational videos still scream about hustle and purpose. The world keeps spinning. Everyone you know keeps running after louder dreams, brighter achievements, more curated identities. But something's different. Something subtle yet irreversible. Because you've left the play. You're no longer in costume. You've walked off stage, mid-scene, and now you're standing in the wings watching everyone else continue as if nothing's changed. At first, you expect peace, relief, some sense of arrival. But what floods in instead is clarity, and it burns. Not soothing clarity, not the kind that comforts. This one confronts. It strips you. It whispers a terrifying truth. I can't lie to myself anymore. You feel it as a tightening in your chest. That old list of excuses? Gone. Society, your upbringing, your trauma, your bad luck. They were never meaningless, but they weren't the whole story either. They didn't write your script. You did. They didn't hold the mask in place. You tied the strings. You see it now. All those moments you felt off, all those times something inside you tugged, whispered, "This isn't it." You didn't listen. You called it doubt. You called it weakness. So you scrolled faster, worked harder, dreamed bigger. You drowned the signal. And now, nothing is drowning it. Because the noise has died down. The distractions don't work like they used to. And in their absence, you hear something you've avoided for years. Silence. But this silence, it isn't sadness. It's not emptiness. It's honesty. The first honest moment your mind has had in what feels like a lifetime. and it's whispering a truth that's almost unbearable to hear. You don't know who you are. You don't know what you want. You don't know why you're here. And strangely, that's not the end. It's the beginning, because this isn't collapse. This is first contact. You've made contact with yourself, not the character, not the construct, not the projection. You, unscripted, unnamed, undecorated. And in that terrifying blank space, something rare appears. A chance to be born again, not into a better version of the old mask, but into something completely outside the game. You don't have to impress. You don't have to explain. You don't have to play. You can stop chasing, stop narrating, stop justifying. You can, for the first time in your life, simply exist without packaging that existence for an audience. That's the magic no one tells you about. The real awakening doesn't come with fanfare. It comes with the absence of noise. It arrives in a whisper, in a pause, in a breath you don't have to earn. And maybe you're scared of it. That's okay. Maybe you want to run. That's human. But if you stay just a little longer, if you sit in that stillness without trying to fix it, label it, or flee from it, you'll discover something that can't be taught. Something that's been waiting for you beneath every distraction, every excuse, every performance. The quiet truth of who you are when you're no longer trying to be anything at all. Without your ego's engine, urgency collapses. The rushing dissolves. The constant need to get somewhere, be someone, prove something. It fades. Deadlines lose their voltage. They no longer spark anxiety or drive. Social comparisons lose their grip. You see people running, building, branding, but it doesn't reach you anymore. Time begins to stretch in strange ways. Days feel longer, mornings quieter, evenings heavier. You're not rushing toward a finish line because, suddenly, there is no race, no scoreboard, no trophy waiting at the end. Before, you wanted to succeed before a certain age. You chased milestones. You collected experiences as receipts for your worth. Every step forward was a loud declaration. See? I'm doing it. I'm real. I matter. But now, that script has gone silent. And without it, you're floating, drifting in a strange stillness most people can't bear to feel. Because stillness is dangerous. It reveals things. It exposes the machinery. It holds up a mirror, not to your accomplishments, but to your need for them. And most people, when faced with that mirror, run. They run back to noise, to ambition, to to-do lists and plans and systems that promise a return to the illusion of momentum. But if you don't run, if you dare to stay, something begins to shift. Stillness, it turns out, isn't sterile. It's not empty. It's fertile. It's the internal field where something new might grow, something untouched by performance, untouched by comparison. It's a space that's never been polluted by the desperation to be impressive. Ask yourself, honestly, what does life feel like without an inner critic? Without the voice that tells you to hustle harder, without the need to be special, liked, admired, without the fear of being ordinary. And if you can observe yourself in that silence, without your ego's filter, you start to see the truth. Everything you chased, every goal, every persona, every curated identity, they weren't reflections of your soul. They were projections, attempts to feed a version of you that never existed, a costume demanding applause to feel real. Now that the audience is gone, the costume falls to the floor, and in the stillness, something terrifyingly beautiful happens. You get to ask questions you were never allowed to ask before. What if I don't need a reason to exist? What if there is no final explanation that makes it all make sense? What if being here, breathing, witnessing, is enough? This moment is sacred, and it won't come again in the same form. It's a rare threshold, raw, primal, foundational. It's dangerous, not because it hurts, but because it dissolves everything you thought was holding you together. Most flee at this point. They run toward new distractions with spiritual names. They rebuild their character with more subtle masks, purpose, alignment, growth. But it's the same performance, just in softer lighting. You don't have to follow them. You can stay here, in the quiet, in the void. And if you dare to look into the emptiness, without blinking, without labeling, it will show you something. Something deeper than identity. Something older than ambition. Something no language can wrap around. Something unedited, unscripted, and entirely your own. And that, whatever it is, doesn't need to be explained. It just needs to be lived. Let's pause here, just for a moment. Take a breath. Not a rushed breath, not a mechanical inhale, but a deliberate, conscious one. Feel it travel into your chest. Feel your heartbeat, not the metaphorical one, but the physical pulse, keeping you tethered to this present moment. Now close your eyes and let go. Let go of the story. Let go of the voice that keeps asking, "What's next?" Let go of the pressure to improve, to fix, to become. Just be, here, now, without condition. This exact moment is the hinge. It's where everything changes, not because the world outside shifts, but because something inside you stops clinging, stops performing, stops narrating. Because in losing your character, the well-rehearsed, socially validated, polished version of yourself, you finally come into contact with your consciousness. Not the thoughts, not the self-concepts, the awareness behind all of it. Raw, quiet, unmasked. And maybe it doesn't feel like a revelation. Maybe it feels like nothing. That's okay, because this is not about spiritual fireworks. It's not about reaching higher states. It's about honoring the silence beneath the noise and realizing it was always there, waiting patiently beneath your performance. You've spent years trying to get motivated, trying to ignite a fire that kept going out. You thought something was wrong with you, that you were broken. But maybe, just maybe, you were trying to breathe life into a script that no longer fit. Freedom doesn't come with triumph. It comes with permission. Permission to be still, to exist without updates, to choose who you are moment by moment, without asking your past for approval, without begging your future for reassurance, without checking if your audience is still clapping. And when you do that, when you surrender the impulse to perform, something strange happens. Life stops dragging you, stops controlling you, not because you've become indifferent, but because you've become present. Apathy is not the same as presence. Apathy is numbness. Presence is aliveness without agenda. It's you, seeing without judgment, feeling without explanation, existing without proving. Yes, fear will come. A tremor will rise in your chest, because the ego doesn't go quietly. It screams, it bargains, it begs you to put the costume back on, to go back on stage, to pretend again. But if you stand still through that tremor, if you don't flinch, you will feel something deeper, a peace that isn't dependent on outcomes, a calm that doesn't need applause, a silence that doesn't need to be filled. And in that stillness, something quietly emerges. Not a new identity, not a better mask. Just you. Free. Enough. Unshaped by opinion. Unburdened by the need to matter. No titles, no labels, no goals to justify your existence. Just breath, just presence, just life, unfolding without needing your control. This is not a final destination. It's a return, a reintroduction to the part of you that never needed fixing, only listening. And now that you're here, in this pause, stay a moment longer. Let it settle. Because what you're feeling now, that's not emptiness. That's truth, finally unchained. So now, before we close this journey, I want to ask you something, not with urgency, but with care. Not as a challenge, but as an invitation. Will you escape? Will you run back to the familiar mask, repaint it with brighter colors, patch the cracks with new lies that sound more noble, more spiritual, more socially acceptable? Will you reach again for the lifeline of expectations, those comforting structures that told you who to be, what to want, how to measure your worth? Or will you do the rarest thing? Will you stay in the silence? Will you let the ego die, not in violence, but in stillness? Will you let the old identity dissolve, knowing it can't take you any further? Because on the other side of that emptiness, the part that still frightens you, is a freedom so vast, so still, it feels unreal at first. Not the freedom of doing whatever you want, not the loud, chaotic kind that depends on external permission. This is different. This is the freedom to exist without needing to justify your existence, to breathe without narration, to feel without performance, to live without labels. If these words stirred something in you, something fragile, something unspoken, I want to offer a small gesture. Leave a comment. Silence frees me, not for likes, not to feed the algorithm, but as a reminder to yourself and anyone who happens to see it that we are not alone in this awakening, that somewhere, someone else is learning to sit in their own stillness, unafraid. And that is a quiet kind of solidarity the world desperately needs. If you feel called to keep exploring this space, you can subscribe. Not because I have answers, because I don't. But sometimes it helps to be reminded that there are others walking this path, that sitting in the silence doesn't mean being lost, that uncertainty isn't failure, it's the soil of real becoming. And if right now your mind whispers, I don't know who I'll be without all of it, let me tell you, that's okay. Not knowing is sacred. It means you're no longer pretending. It means the performance is over. You were never broken. You were asleep. And now, you're waking. Don't rush to close the gap. Don't scramble for the next goal. Don't numb the vertigo. Stand in it. Let it shake you. Let it expose everything you clung to. Because what feels like trembling is transformation. Feel the tremor. Feel the pause. Let yourself exist in that liminal space where nothing is certain and everything is possible. Because on the other side of that pause is not loss. It's not emptiness. It's not weakness. It's the strongest kind of being. Your undressed consciousness. Your presence without decoration. So before you scroll away, before you click to the next thing, just pause, turn off the screen, sit with yourself. Let the world wonder what changed in you. Let them see your eyes and not know why they seem deeper, quieter, more still, because something has been born. And what has been born has no name. That is its strength. And maybe, just maybe, it's the beginning of everything real.